I mean, I was not going to be late today, Juliana.
Oh, very good. Did you see my response to you in Slack?
No, not yet. I sent it this morning, and I was like, and then I have not looked since, but I was waiting for something funny.
Oh, yeah. All right, very cool. Okay, so I'll let whoever's gonna roll in. So let me just introduce Molly, guys. So Molly is a sleep expert and a very, very good friend of mine, just so you guys know. And I want you guys to kind of just really be able to get geeky with it. Don't mind the blonde hair and good looks. She is one of the nerdiest people that I know. Okay. She has one of the only, I think right now, newsletters that I actually read. So I'm sure, I'm just going to plug that in. You got, Molly, selflessly, put it in the chat, have everyone sign up. Cause it is one of the best. I still remember, when she went to Japan, she had this whole thing on bidets. I now bought a bidet because of that damn newsletter. So, it is just, really funny, really awesome. So it's just such a treat to have you here. And I really, really appreciate you. So Molly, to kind of introduce you to the team. So this is our community. We do these. This is owners only and their teams. So what I wanted to do, we usually have kind of marketing peeps kind of tell us all about, really, really fun stuff with marketing. But I did want to kind of do a little bit of summer wellness, especially with Corona. And then all of the, I don't know, what do we have? Hornets and fucking pigs flu now and all this stuff that's happening. People are burning out a little bit. And I thought it would be such a good time to really allow us to kind of talk about sleep and productivity. So this is really an intimate group. We have fun, we curse, we tinker, we do all that good stuff. And I really want to kind of get to the crux of it. So I'm going to geek out with you for a little bit and ask you a couple of questions, kind of open the floor, because we have a little bit more people than usual. And guys, if you have an opportunity, if you can turn your cameras on, that would be my preference and my request. So I see you all. So let's just get started. You ready? Yeah. Okay, cool. So one of my, so I guess just kind of opening up the space, right? A lot of us here are either working, or skilling. And what does it look like? What happens to your sleep when you're working 12 to 15 hours, right? When you start to kind of faint and my questions are going to be around the, sort of intersection between sleep and productivity, right? Because that's what I care about. Everyone else can ask their own stuff. So I'm curious to know, Molly, if you're working 15 hours, what does that do to your sleep?
Well, great question. First of all, thank you for having me here because, look at this awesome crew of people that you've created. And before I even answer that, I should begin with the fact that the reason I created this company, Sleep is a Skill, that the whole intention is around, optimizing sleep through technology, accountability, and behavioral change. It came because I was solving my own problem and doing exactly what you just said, burning the candle at both ends. An entrepreneur in the middle of Manhattan, actually was over by where now Hudson Yards is, nonstop construction. Sleep was just a mess. And honestly, for most of my life, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I just was like, I'm a night owl. I make my own hours. Who cares? And yet once with keeping really a lifestyle, like you just said, 15 hours all over the place. I was going to bed as the sun was rising often. And it began to catch up with me in a way that I didn't really connect until later when I hit this rock bottom and went through a period of insomnia, which was really changed my whole life. It was such a wake-up call, puns for days with that. It was one of those things that this can't go this way. So I'm just sharing that from a place of there's no sense of judgment or anything for any of us because I did all the things not to do. And really the reason I created this company was to solve my own problem. And stepping past that really changed my entire life as a result. So what did I learn by living a lifestyle where I was going for, 15-hour days and just completely kind of upside down from the rhythms of nature, which really, kind of get into the importance of that for sleep. There's a number of things, but often if we are working that much, then the ability for us to be able to downshift, our brain state, to be able to tap into a parasympathetic response, to be able to get to sleep and a rich sleep, and to balance. One of the things that's very important for sleep, very unsexy but true, is just the consistency is king in the world of sleep. So if we are running ourselves ragged, often it's unsustainable to do that consistently and keep that structured bedtime and wake time. So once we start doing that, our sleep often will get impacted in a way that is really fascinating, I think. So depending on different times, if you swing your schedule out, whatever, Tuesday, I have this big thing, so I got to stay up late. So when I stay up late, then I'm pushing back my ability to tap into deep sleep, which happens in the first half of our sleep. If we then find we have to wake up early to finish whatever presentation or something, then when we do that, that's tapping into our REM, which happens in the morning hours. So either way, you can't really, it's one area that I'm a big kind of biohacker, it behooves us to take seriously and understand that there's certain things we can hack and make it really maximize the benefits, but then there is a certain structure that works. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so in terms of your biohacking, right? So I know like a lot of us have wearables, right? So I know, what are your favorite wearables right now?
Great question. Okay. So,
and also, and let me follow that up, and then like we'll just kind of like do it like super laser so I can get some other people to answer some questions. And then what are the wearables or things, right? Because I sent you a message through Instagram the other day. I was like, oh, this thing looks so cool with the sunrise and da-da-da. And you're like, no, the EMFs on that shit are not good. So like, what would you say, like, what are your kind of favorite ones and why? And then like things to kind of stay away from because they actually affect you negatively.
Yeah, great question. So in the realm of sleep specifically, so there's a lot of things we can get gadget-wise that can help sleep over the long term, but I start with all my clients actually using the Oura Ring, just not because it's infallible. It's certainly not a polysonogram. There are things that are not going to be as great about it as you compare to that, but it is a great baseline for overall sleep and health and well-being. So starting with that, so that just looks like the ring, in case you're not familiar with that. No affiliation with this at all. And then for other sleep elements, Dream is a headband that you wear, spelled DREEM. What's exciting about that one is it is FDA cleared and able to access kind of more information around sleep stages than. So if you look at sleep stages also on the Oura Ring or just about any other wearable, just really for most part don't, because unfortunately they don't line up with a lot of what we understand to be the gold standard, the polysonogram as of right now, which also is not infallible. But at the same time, that one does a pretty good job. However, it's very uncomfortable. It falls off. It's a headband, weird looking contraption. So it's not for everyone. But then there are some other ones too. Whoop band like this. We'll do a lot of my athletes will wear these because it does do a pretty decent job at looking at HRV, heart rate, and sleep, and then giving you an understandable amount of how much you can work out in the next day without kind of tapping yourself out. And then Apple is coming out with a new sleep, getting into the sleep game. So to be continued on what comes out with that. Garmin is a one that some people like, not as big of a fan of that one personally. BioStrap is another one that will look into a little bit more around breath. But also there are other gadgets that you can utilize to help support the ability to get to sleep. So tapping into that parasympathetic response. So like heart math is an OG, kind of like this. And that one will look at HRV and kind of getting you into what they call coherence. So using that throughout the day. There's all kinds of, I mean, I'm testing this one. This company just sent me that with called Zen. The company is Nirvana. So looking at vagal tone to help with HRV. You can do things like red light therapy, like doing one of these guys throughout the day. So there's a lot of stuff that we can get into for more gadgets.
Oh, and for people who don't know, what is HRV and why is that important?
Yeah, great question. So heart rate variability is the long term of it, but essentially it's the kind of the time between the beats in our heart. So essentially, what's valuable about it as of right now, it's one of our few metrics to get an understanding in black and white of the autonomic nervous system, of how either stressed we are, both, you know, from an internal perspective, but also an external perspective. So a lot, it's the most crazy, low-key, maddening stat, because it's just so interesting of how much it will go up and down. And basic elements of that is that for the most part, we're often looking for it to be the higher it goes for our baseline tends to be a good representation. Not always, there are asterisks, but that's a blanket statement. And then, so with it, it can really give us a sense of, one, if we're getting run down, stressed, sick, if our food is not agreeing with us, if our air quality is, you know, not optimal, if we're not getting enough sunlight, if we're working out too much. There's just a number of things that will impact this metric, but it can be a fascinating area to track. And it's actually getting more notoriety right now as it relates to COVID, since a number of these trackers are being involved in studies to help spot COVID before you might realize you have it. And so HRV is one of those things that you'll often see tank before getting sick, along with a number of other metrics.
Cool. And so I remember one of your newsletters way back when, and I responded to you, and I was like, okay, so alcohol, so day drinking, hard spirits is good. That was my takeaway. So what I'm saying is,
yeah.
So I was like, because you were like tracking alcohol with sleep and how that affects you, right? So I was like, okay, as an adult, day drinking. So can you just talk a little bit about how alcohol affects sleep, you know, / productivity, and the times of day, you know, just really quickly, and then maybe even weed as well, because I know you recently did a podcast on weed.
Yeah, sure. So great question. And alcohol is something that it's very tricky to eliminate its impact from our sleep stats. Like, I have, you know, dozens of people that I'm following each day across the globe, and I can almost always know if they drank or didn't drink, or if they ate a huge meal late. And so it does kind of similar things. But so it's very tricky to not have it impact your sleep in some way, even if you do all the tricks. But if you want to minimize the impacts, then yes, I advocate for lots of weird things for people to do. But one, to move your, kind of become a leader in your calendar and your group of friends. And I know it's odd times right now, maybe hopefully not solo drinking too much. But what we want to do is move things back as much as possible. So advocating for boozy brunch, advocating for happy hours, even if it's masked or, you know, with a small group. So with that, what you do is that you want to ensure that we either way are helping to minimize the impact of that alcohol, and giving ourselves sufficient time before bed. And now this might be like, well, of course, yeah, I'm not going to drink, you know, an hour before and go to sleep, obviously. But even if we're doing it, you know, 6, 7, all of that realm, it will really, really impact not only our sleep, but our health the next day. And for some people, you know, we can see that impact stick around on our HRV readouts for multiple days. So it's something that you want to move back. And to the point around the hard alcohol, what we're also trying to do is eliminate the elements around the glycemic index and the spike there. So of course, a lot of those sugary drinks, but then even if you add in with beer, the gluten impact, And so no matter how you feel about gluten or what have you, it does tend to show itself in the stats, unfortunately. And so you're just trying to play with some of the cleaner alcohols as much as possible, and maybe using a mixer of, like seltzer, lemon, all of those type of deal. But then there are more things popping up with adaptogens and this, that, and the other, so you can play with that as well. But that is one of the things you can do. The other thing you can do is that you're trying to minimize the dehydration, because that will also impact your HRV, your body temperature, all of that. So you're mega hydrating. You can do things like chlorophyll in water. You can do a lot of trace minerals. You can try, or you can test out activated charcoal, the same thing that, if you go into emergency room and you've overdosed, they'll, throw lots of activated charcoal at you. So obviously it's an extreme example, but it's, some of these different things that you can play with to see the impacts. But what's helpful is that because we do have some of these different trackers, we can usually ascertain some of the different things that can help make a difference for us and our results.
All right, very cool. All right, I'm gonna do one more question and then I'll open it up to the group. How does sex affect sleep? And does it matter during like the time of day because of endorphin release, right? So like morning quickies versus afternoon delights versus evening. Like how does that affect sleep? Does timing, because a lot of people here are into like habits and routines. So like how does the timing of things affect your sleep?
Yeah, great question. So one, sex usually tends to be beneficial to HRV. And so if we're talking about the HRV stance, then for a couple of reasons, also for women specifically, we have a whole different set of things to be mindful of, because we're not even just operating on the circadian rhythm, the 24-hour spectrum, but for menstruating women, we're also being mindful of our infradian rhythm, which is around a 28-day rhythm. And within that 28 days, we have many different periods where our hormones, lots of different things are happening with our hormones. So they're actually, you can almost from a female biohacking perspective, augment the amount of sex that you're having at certain times. For instance, the luteal phase might be particularly beneficial, and men can advocate that for women because it acts as sort of a cortisol flush. And so assuming that it's a positive experience for all parties and that, you're maybe getting some sort of release by the end of all of it. There's a lot of asterisks with all these statements, but also, there are some studies around the differences between men and women after orgasm, and also a lot of kind of cliche, kind of nuance or thoughts around men kind of passing out right after, women being more kind of alert. But what we do tend to find is either way, anything that will tap us into that parasympathetic response, kind of being present, being in the moment, tends to be beneficial to sleep. The reason being, and when I'm talking about sleep, I'm often discussing when people are having problems with falling asleep or staying asleep, which tends to go into the grouping of having a hyper-aroused brain state. And when we have that hyper-aroused brain state, that rumination can turn our mind off. Anything that we can supplement to bring in the ability to tap into that rest and digest state is going to be beneficial. I was sharing with Juliana that before the major lockdown, one of the last big events I went to was CES. That's one of the largest tech events in the world. And they, for the first time, had sex health was allowed. So sex tech was allowed to present. And they had some really crazy innovations, and they were actually discussing the circadian component of sex, and as in not just sex, but the results. So like when women will have certain orgasms, so they would have different, I don't know how deep we can go, puns.
As deep as you want.
Okay, but they would have different vibrators for women, and a lot of these were female developed companies, so they were getting a lot of accolades. And they would find, so these were smart vibrators that could actually sense the strength of the muscles. They would go to an app and all kinds of crazy things, but they would notice a circadian component to orgasms. So there'd be stronger, they would find for some of their studies earlier in the day, and then kind of weaker at night. So you can play with the timing and playing with that circadian rhythm. And that's one of the things I think is so fascinating about this area of chronobiology, which is nothing more than really, not nothing more, but it's essentially means the science of time, of how many things and processes in our body are on this particular rhythm that we can get more into. It's really interesting.
All right, cool. And on that note, I'm going to open it up to everyone. So if you guys want to go, just kind of either unmute yourselves, and if we have a few people unmuting themselves, I will call the winner, and then the other people will go next. So you guys just ask whatever you want. This is our opportunity to just tinker it out.
Can I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Can you talk more about sleep and exercise, just like in general?
Yes. Yeah. Great question. Okay. So one of the overarching frameworks, if we're looking to strategically get more sleep or improve sleep or richer sleep, is to operate within what's known as circadian rhythm entrainment. So our circadian rhythm is not fixed, it's very dynamic, and there's a spectrum where we might either fall, the weaker side of our circadian rhythm or the stronger side of our circadian rhythm.
And Molly, just for people who don't know, can you just give a super short synopsis of what circadian rhythm is?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So our circadian rhythm is operating on about a 24-hour rhythm in which we as humans are diurnal creatures, meaning that we are designed to be active, largely active during the daylight hours and at rest during the night hours. So within that span, within that thinking, and that was really how it was for thousands and thousands of years, hunter-gatherer days, past that maybe, you would have some candles and try to expand the days a little bit past sunset, but you weren't doing a whole heck of a lot in that realm until Edison. So until the, of course there's Tesla and all kinds of things, but until what we know about the creation of the light bulb and our ability to augment the days. So once that happened, which is really in the blip of human, since the time that humans have been on this planet, a very small amount of time. So we are doing things that are outside of that spectrum of the rhythm of nature. So a lot of what we're trying to do in 2020 is to help us simplify and realign with the rhythms of nature. And I promise this will get to exercise. So what we're trying to do is want to impact and give the cues that are aligned with our circadian rhythm as much as possible to tell the brain and the body. So the main one is our main clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus in our brains. That is kind of our master clock. And then there's just in virtually every cell in our body are these other mini clocks, all trying to stay on time. So within circadian rhythm entrainment, we're looking to entrain all of that stimuli to help tell the body what it needs to be doing, because it is dynamic and it will adjust to a degree, but not well, to different schedules. So within circadian rhythm entrainment, there's really two things to be mindful of: light and temperature. Now, light is a whole big topic and it's actually one of the most impactful for circadian rhythm, and it also involves darkness. But for now, talking about temperature can be impacted by, for one, exercise, for two, meal timing and type, for three, even our thoughts, which is a fascinating one. The fact that the types of thoughts we have can actually heat up or cool down our body, and we want to strategically kind of put those where they need to be put throughout the day. But then also chronopharmacology, types of drugs that we're taking, the most common being caffeine and alcohol. But then, of course, I didn't even touch on the THC question, so that's another one that can impact temperature. But so bringing it to that question around exercise, as far as on the totem pole of things that will impact our sleep, we want to really, really ensure that we are prioritizing exercise, because that will help with our overall health and during our sleep, so we'll get richer sleep. Now, what we largely want to do is get that obviously earlier in the day. The reason being is because that will heat up our body in a particular way, as well as heart health. Depending on our heart health It can take some people longer to stabilize and bring their heart rate back to normal post our workouts. But the big asterisk is I have heard people that are really stressed out about sleep, and so then they'll start cutting working out altogether because they say, oh, I don't want to work out and then mess up my sleep, so I'm going to cut it, if they can't get it in until a bit later. In even more recent studies, they have found that you can push it a bit. Basically, we want to often use the sunlight as our guide, and so that we're not going too past sunset. Because if you think about our template of hunter-gatherer days, post sunset, it's like black, dark. It would be very unusual and odd if you were barring like a war battle or something, you wouldn't be doing a whole lot of activity. So we really do want to try to mimic that as much as possible, even within our 21st century. I'm not saying we need to, go move into the woods or something, but so you want to be mindful of your exercise to largely put it into the earlier parts of the day. The other thing that tends to actually be challenging with working out in the 21st century is that not only are you getting hit with the temperature change, but many of us are working out in blue lit gyms and indoor, environment that is really, that's also going to impact our sleep too. So you're kind of getting a double whammy if you're doing it particularly late. So the general principle is we want to take the time to design our days in a way that are crafted around circadian mindset.
Haley, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Next person.
Question on, you mentioned clean alcohols. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. Wait, who is that talking? Speaking?
Mark.
Mark. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I was like, where is that coming from, Mark? Okay. So clean alcohols. Yeah. This is a tricky one because you're starting to see a lot more coming out onto the market. A couple key things that we're looking to find. One, just that they're not going to have a big sugar spike. Like I'll have a lot of clients that are still trying to put, things into and not even realizing certain mixers or elements that they're putting in there can have more hidden sugars. And also some of those liqueurs having some of those problems there. Also, unfortunately, even things like wine have just been so unregulated in so many ways that there's just so much sugar in a lot of those, and whole weird things around not needing to go into detail around the ingredients that is in there. So those often, if you're not doing the work for looking at where those, it's just like sugar water. So really, we don't want to have that. And also, beers can then have a lot of the gluten, barley, all these things that can be problematic for our sleep and sleep and health. So our heart rate, our body temperature, our HRV, respiratory rate, all those things tend to really flare up. So potato vodka can tend to be a bit of a cleaner option because then, we're not pulling from some more gluten sources. And even if you're like, I don't have a problem with gluten, no big deal. But many of us, it shows up in our numbers, unfortunately. So if we're looking at that, and of course we want to test too, and to see what's agreeing with us. But often it's those cleaner vodkas or gins that tend to have a bit of a less of an impact. But also just the timing of it is going to be a big deal too. So looking to set up your calendar, being the one spearheading, the weekend, breakfast, lunch deal, brunch thing, early happy hours, all of that just to allow for that to work itself out of our body. And part of that comes into play too with, there tends to also just be a behavioral element where then when we do drink, we often will eat in addition to that. And so if you're not timing that right, then you're often finding yourself both spiking your glucose. And then what's the problem with that late night eating is that raises that body temperature, which we're really looking to drop by 2 to 3 degrees on average at night, which doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but it's a big deal for our core body temperature. And if it's not being supported by our behaviors, then we're really in trouble for the quality of our sleep.
Molly, so if we had to categorize it, would we say like clear liquors, clear spirits, dark spirits, wine, beer?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
There's dry farms is another one, that I'm sure you guys might have heard about, the biohacking things to help out with wine. So some people will go to that one. Then if you're talking dry farms, that might skirt that stack. So it might be elevated a bit.
Okay.
You still want to be mindful for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know like I love wine, but it shows up in my stats. Like my HRV tanks when I have wine versus spirits, like versus tequila. It's awful. But it's true. All right, Deb.
Yep. So it's the vodka, gin, tequila. Yeah.
All right, Deb, you were next because you guys were like.
I don't want to hear things bad about wine.
I know. Error, bad news. Molly ruins everything. Okay, another segment.
I'm wondering if you could tell us like the cadence of your day. Like you mentioned you're drinking chlorophyll. So like, and I know it's going to be a little different for everyone, but I think we're probably curious, like what time do you go to bed? What time do you get up in the morning? And how do you kind of structure your day so that you maximize your sleep, and including supplements?
Oh, tell them your last meal time.
Oh yeah. All right, my last meal time is very weird. Don't worry, not at all something that you have to do, but my last meal time tends to be around 2 p.m., which is in alignment with something known as early time restricted eating. And it's a really fascinating area if you want to at all nerd on it further. Circadian Code is a great book for that. And it's with Dr. Sachin Panda, who's done a ton of work on understanding how food and meals will impact our overall circadian rhythm. So essentially I end eating around 2 p.m.-ish. And then, so that's probably the most like shocking thing. And then the rest of it, to start the day, I'm usually waking up at around the 6s. It depends. My boyfriend and I, we've been digital nomads for about the past 3 years. And so in different places, depending on the sunrise, sunset timeline, then we'll kind of adjust it accordingly. But, so we've been we're in Thailand for quite a period of time before the lockdown. So there would be, different time zone things to consider there, but really martinis. That's awesome. So really, depending on the place that we're in, we want to wake up as close to sunrise as we can comfortably do. But the big thing is, before I say that, certainly don't want to make it like a must have it this particular way. The first thing is that really sitting with our calendar and creating a timeline that will work for us, that we can be consistent about. We're looking to have it be really 7 days a week, which I had never really had in my life happen 7 days a week, and knowing what can come about from that, which for me is just mind-blowing, of getting tired consistently at the same time every day and waking up without an alarm, which is just also mind-blowing for me. So it's waking up, but one of the biggest things, if you get nothing out of what I'm saying, it's when you first wake up, getting ourselves outside. So it's like the first thing that I'll do. And the reason for that is that it's something known as sunlight anchoring, and sunlight anchoring is going to really tune our circadian rhythm and help set that pendulum, because you can either very easily, not very easily, but over a span of time, move out like a pendulum your sleep onset. And so one of the first cues for that is when we get that sunlight, it hits within our eyes, and you want to make sure, I used to wear sunglasses all the time. I thought it was like the coolest thing, you look way better in pictures, all the things. And yet I've pretty much tossed my sunglasses. Also, if you have contacts or glasses, that can also, or LASIK, all these things can kind of impact some of our ability to really maximize the power of full spectrum sunlight. And full spectrum sunlight within our eyes and connects to that suprachiasmatic nucleus. So you want to be doing that for at least around 20 minutes, if not more. And also just setting up your day in a way that will support yourself getting outside, getting more sunlight on your skin, because of those photoreceptors in our skin that are kind of sensing what time is it, what am I supposed to be doing? And when you get that hit of sunlight first thing, that can also help suppress the continued secretion of melatonin if you are kind of out of whack and you're one of those like zombie dragging morning people, and you're really trying to take back your consistency around your sleep. Yeah, get the D, exactly. Because vitamin D ends up, it's called a vitamin, but it actually acts really more as a hormone. So getting that is going to be super important for then creating the cocktail necessary to get that melatonin at night. It's all very much interconnected. And so if you want to go further in some of the layouts of the actual structure of the day, that first shot of sunlight is going to be very, very, very important. And then after that, what you want to do is create your meal timing in a way that's going to work for you, but as also consistent as possible. So there's something known as metabolic jet lag, which is when we move ourselves all over the place. We're having such a variability in our scheduling. That can also act as a confusing cue to the body because it doesn't know what to prepare itself for. The process of digestion is such a taxing experience. So much blood flow is required, so much needs to happen. So pick your meal times and really try to keep them, as close as possible within reason. And so then as far as to answer that supplements element of things, I honestly am not a big supplement proponent. I know a lot of people in the sleep arena will, tons of take this some of that supplement. One, I think it can actually be very irresponsible to throw out all these different supplements if we're not testing each person, and can actually have a lot of negative effects on our sleep. But if there is one supplement that I'll say for largely most people is magnesium glycinate at night, but also just making sure that we're not taking it right before bed. A lot of us, and myself included for many years, would just kind of think about it as almost, as if it's like Ambien or something. You're throwing back this thing right before bed, but it doesn't really quite work like that because magnesium is more known as the relaxation mineral. So we're looking to relax earlier in that evening. So we need a buffer period of quite a period of time, particularly for such high brain state activities that happens in the 21st century, to kind of downshift from that. So we want to take that magnesium glycinate more around post sunset, depending on where you are on the globe. But also the other big thing is once the sun sets, using that as your cue to put on blue blockers to really turn out the lights is my recommendation. Again, I told you I'd suggest a lot of weird things. So also, if you can tap into candles, fire, all that, but if you're not willing to do that and you think that's nuts, you can do some of these like red lights. Also, some people think that that's nuts. So you can tap into, if you want to have the least weird looking things, incandescent lights, although it's going to be more not as ideal on the spectrum of things, but incandescent lights because they have a higher red ratio. And then like Edison bulbs could fall into that, which can look, more cool. So doing all of those things are gonna be really important. Get those blue blockers on. Make sure they're not those clear blue blockers, which really don't do a whole heck of a lot. So get the very weird looking ones like the orange or red, preferably, when the red will cut the blue and green light. And then also, haven't even touched on the fact that a lot of, you can help leverage health and sleep with different elements of contrast therapy around heat. So both heat and cold. So we can play with that. But for instance, I might do infrared sauna at night, or hot bath, Epsom salts, hot shower, because counterintuitively, you do that in the evening with enough buffer time, it will lower your body temperature to lower than it would have before. And so it actually can help support that cooling process. And then I put my temperature on pretty intense, not intensely cool, but for some people, so you want to have it more in those low 60s range if possible, at the highest being around 68. Can turn on the chili pad. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like a cooling mattress pad. And then also ensuring that it really works to have that all that cold following the fact that you've actually been active and warmed up your body during the day. So during the day, I will put on the thermostat to higher, so more in like the 70s, moving, you know, the body around, getting exercise, all of that to make sure that our heat is high throughout the day. And so all of this is like, it sounds so foreign, but really this is how things would have automatically been for, you know, thousands of years we were living outside. And even before the lockdown, the stats from the World Health Organization were around 90% of our days are spent inside for most people. So that's before a lockdown. And so what is that doing as zoo animals in a lot of the ways that we're living? It's creating all of this counter to nature cues that we'll have to then kind of create our own circadian timing. Although I do anticipate that there will be circadian heating in the future, circadian lighting in the future, circadian awareness around meal timing, already continuous glucose monitors. You'll see very quickly, if I don't know if any of you have seen how people are starting to do that more regularly. I'll have a lot of my clients that are very, very healthy, not about, you know, health concerns, more around managing unstable glucose and mood, and our, you know, how anxious or depressed we can get when all that stuff is unstable. So I do anticipate that there will be a lot more of awareness coming in the future for this, so it won't be such a undertaking to navigate.
Very cool. And then also, I know, just kind of as an interesting factoid, when you do, I know you do a lot of magnesium in the evening. Sometimes you'll do Epsom salt baths. And just to kind of denote anyone who does do an Epsom salt bath, how much quantity of Epsom salt do you usually recommend? Because a lot of people will like kind of like teaspoon it, and that doesn't do anything, right? So how much Epsom salt do you use? And then Deb had a question, and Tamara had a question as well.
Cool. Yeah, great question. So low magnesium levels are kind of just a very common problem for sleep. And so we're looking to transdermally get more magnesium in, because it can be notoriously tricky to, you can be like, oh, well, I take magnesium supplements, no big deal. But unfortunately, it can be more than that. So we might have to work a bit harder to get that in. So transdermal magnesium can be another way to do that. So Epsom salt will get some of that into your pores and your skin. So I tend to get on Amazon for like $25. You can get this big, like 20-pound bag of Epsom salt. And then I just put like a mug within it, and then mug. So it's a whole thing. So you want to put like a whole experience in it. And if you guys have heard about float tanks being a bit of the rage for more recently, right? You know, part of the power that people are pointing to with that is, you know, you become more buoyant because of how much salt is within there. But a lot of the things that people will speak to around the sleep properties, presumably tends to be around, one, that magnesium, but then of course the relaxation, sensory deprivation elements of things. So we're looking to create as much of that higher amounts of magnesium. And then I'll also, if need be, or sore or whatever, you can do magnesium sprays or oils after as well. Sometimes they can like have this weird stinging effect almost after. So some people are like, you know, hesitant, but some of them will blend in more aloe within there and different calming, cooling properties. So that can be another one, particularly if you're sore, and pain can also keep a lot of people up too, which can lead into that THC as being one of the elements for that.
All right, cool.
So yeah.
And then how many hours of sleep do you get?
So that's a great question. There was a period, so I shared with you guys that I was super extreme night owl, then went through this really challenging period of insomnia while traveling. So with jet lag in the mix, and I was like this walking zombie. So once I started restoring my sleep health, there was a period when I was just tapped out at 7 hours. And I was like, is this like the new norm for me? I can't get past 7 hours. But with also just being so obsessive on this topic, I've been able to now get it up to around 7 hours and 45 minutes. So that's been pretty cool and life-changing for me because I never had that much sleep before all of this. So, and, you know, getting that consistency and, I think one of the things, and I share this with Juliana all the time, is that now at this point, because I'd spent so much of my life not living like that, so now to live this life in this way, I feel like part of my saying is that I'm addicted to feeling good. So I'm willing to do the things, you know, to cut back on drinking unless in more special occasions or much earlier in the day, to not eat late at night. That used to be a big thing for me. I would have popcorn. Oh my God. I was going to make a little passion project company on the side of popcorn. I swear to God, that's how obsessed I was with it. And that was a nighttime thing. And just such like a rich, just some sort of, I don't know. It was like a childlike thing. And yet I had no clue how much it was impacting my sleep and just how bad I felt. And it wasn't just the popcorn, but the whole world of it being kind of upside down on how to take care of my body and my health. And now knowing what I know, it's just kind of not worth it in the same way, or I'll reorganize my days in ways that, so like for instance, I'm all excited because this movie Palm Springs is coming out. So we actually have new movies on Hulu. Who knew? Literally just came out today. So the plan is to watch it tomorrow. And have that popcorn earlier in the day, which by the way, unfortunately, I'm less and less doing popcorn ever now because the glycemic hit will just be really big. It stinks. So doing all that earlier, but it can really, once you know, the knowingness puts you back in the driver's seat around your health and your well-being. And it's just a really nice thing to be able to function within that.
Tamara.
I have a question. So I have two
Wait,
boys.
Rebecca,
Oh,
Tamara
yeah.
is next, and then you're next.
Sorry.
All right. Hi. Sorry I was late. Please don't make me sing, Juliana.
No, not today. We're not wasting time. Let's go.
So I definitely thank you so much for talking about the sunlight, all of that, because fabulous insights for me. And, you know, I'm working outside all the time now and have been, and now even the last couple of days have seen that I slept more the last couple of nights. I use Sleep Cycle.
Okay, sure. Mm-hmm.
And it's because I've been working outside so much and been outside so much that I think I shocked my system that I was sleeping like 5 hours and I used to sleep 9. So this is like I'm like, okay, this is definitely the last couple of days. It's been crappy and raining. And now last night I slept 7 and 40. So that's like, so I'm seeing the pattern. So thank you for that insight. And I'm going to be able to track that. The question I have, and I'm hoping nobody else has asked it and that I missed it. Like there are holistic wellness centers where you go for retreats and stuff like that, where like you go in and there is no technology, there is no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no anything. You have to go off-site to do it because they believe that it affects your system. And I am super sensitive. I'm one of those people who like, you take, you know, 1 Sudafed, not 2. Like that's just my system. And I know that about myself. And I always wonder, you know, should I be unhooking my modem at night to be helping my, you know, and is this something that you like, you seem like you know so much about all this stuff. And I feel like this group would probably be interested in that too. So that was my question.
It's a great question. And number one, I so acknowledge you for just your awareness around, you know, the sunlight and your health and really making a difference with the results. I mean, getting that 7 hours and 40-ish minutes of sleep, it's like a different day, a different human. And, you know, we haven't really even touched on all of the health implications and just all-cause mortality from chronic sleep deprivation. So putting in that effort, I believe it to be the number one, this is a controversial statement, but the number one area to start to improve overall health and well-being, even just from a pragmatic sense, you know, because once we get rested, then we're more likely to, one, our glucose levels stabilize, so we tend to choose better foods. So on the nutrition element of things, it just makes it easier. But also what gets cut when we don't sleep is often our workouts, or just things fall. So, and even mood studies will be a big difference. Yeah, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, Molly, and just to kind of tack on to that question, right? So
Yeah.
one of them would be like the question around EMFs. Can we also tack on 5G, and like, is that just going to kill everybody? So cool.
Oh, yeah.
Is that just, but like, keep it a little concise so that we can get a couple of more questions in, because I know Rebecca's got, and I saw a few kind of hands.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So from that place around the EMFs, every night I have a timer that auto turns off my Wi-Fi, and they're like $10 on Amazon. Yeah, like those Christmas timers. You can actually get like 2 for $10-ish around there. Yeah, so really look into those, so then you don't even think about it, and just auto goes off, auto comes back on. So that's one thing you can do. The Wi-Fi box is going to be the biggest thing. So it's known as the proximity is the poison if you do have that sensitivity. So anything that is going to, yeah. So you want to stay away. So ideally around 6 feet is part of the general statement. So when you're sleeping, so strategically set up your space. You can also, if you really want to nerd out, get some of the different meters that will check on that topic. And then 5G, oh God, what a topic. Here, and by the way, I'm always very mindful of when I speak about this stuff, because there's a lot of big money behind this area. Telecommunications is, really in rivals big pharma at this point. So there's so much money and there's so much push that, oh, it's fine, it's great. Here's what we know. I mean, for sleep, for, anywhere from 7 to some people 9 hours a night, if you're up, to be risking that element of radiation is concerning. And so if we can do some of those basic things like timers to make a difference, great. 5G, whole different animal. And then even in 5G, there's the concerns of jump conduction. So certain things that we'll be wearing in a 5G world can make us more susceptible to kind of acting as a source point for that jump, essentially. So, metals, wearing metal items in that world, it's just, something to think about. It's a much bigger topic, and, people do get really opinionated on this topic. What I know is that when I go into different cities, that my HRV often really tanks, and there's confounding issues around that, of course. The stimuli and the noise pollution and the light pollution and all the things. But if you just there's a couple of websites that you can plug in where you are and how many towers and meters and all the things that are around you. And where I used to live in Manhattan, it was just like it gave an error red to like too much for me to even calculate. So it's just, there's so much there. So what we can do to be mindful is, one, you can test and go into more elements of nature, but in the 5G world, it won't really even matter, especially if it's from satellites. So that sucks. It's a longer topic.
All right, on that note.
For now, yeah.
Yeah. Rebecca.
As I'm like gulping my coffee, listening to you, taking notes. So my question is, my kids every night, they're like, Mom, we're hungry, like right before bed. It's like it's bedtime. It might be like a stall technique, but if you had to recommend something before bed, like I'm always like a piece of bread, but now I'm like, oh, that has gluten and that's bad. So if there was like one food item that you would recommend right before bed, what would it be?
Great question. So one that people have thrown out is things like almond butter to help stabilize, like very fat-rich and protein to help stabilize glucose instability at night, or a protein-rich item if you do like hard-boiled eggs or something.
Eggs before bed?
I know it's a bizarre thing, but if you can do, it's very protein rich. It depends on the person. I know. And I work also with a lot of like keto and paleo people. So for them, they're like, oh, of course. But it depends. But I would absolutely, I'm so glad that you mentioned the bread, because the bread on the glycemic element of things that can tend to spike us, often even more, depending on the bread, can spike people more than the same amount of sugar that it turns into. Like, you know, so if it turns into like 1 or 2 teaspoons of sugar, then if you were to just have that, the bread can actually be more elevating. And then we're not even just concerned about the peak, but the crash that comes with that. And that can, you know, impact the quality of our sleep too. So, and if people are really hungry before bed, that can or during the night, can often be a sign that our circadian rhythm is really, could use some healing, to put it nicely. Because there's actually hormones in place to help down regulate that, because again, back in hunter-gatherer days, it would get so dark, you can't go hunt a deer in the dark. So there's actually the limitation. So the change in our hormones for leptin and ghrelin are meant to be in place to subside that hunger, so that it's not that big of a deal. And then once you wake up, and then the fast breakfast is when you would step into the meal timing, when light's available. So it's very much a holistic thing. So once we take in those behaviors, we should be able to see some of those subsiding in the evening too, for most of us.
Great, thank you.
Also, I've seen people freeze and do like almond butter pops. So that's kind of fun, right? So you can get fun with it for kids. Uh-huh. Yeah, you can do like little almond butter pops. All right, I think we have 2 more questions left, timing wise, just to kind of be respectful of everybody. Who do we got?
I have another question. What was the tracker that you mentioned for
that's what I was gonna
athletes?
ask too.
For athletes?
Yeah.
So Whoop, WHOOP. So I have been working with a lot of UFC fighters, and so they're really big on the Whoop, and they can kind of gamify their results. And one of the things they like about that, it's very heavy on heart rate and HRV, and so it will kind of spit out your recommended strain, they'll call it, for the day, and then you'll try to hit that, but based on it factors in your sleep, is the idea with that. If you're more looking for the fitness part of it, that could be an easy one. They're also the only tracker currently on the market that does a subscription model, so it's like $30 a month. And then if you Google, there's like little promo codes that you can get it for basically nothing the first month, and then it comes to you and it's like this $30 a month thing versus the upfront price. But again, if you're looking for sleep and seeing the behaviors and how much your behaviors will impact your sleep, I tend to recommend the Oura Ring, spelled O-U-R-A. Yeah, and again, no affiliation, but they're not as great for fitness. So yeah, and a lot of my clients are nuts, and they'll have like 4 or 5 of these gadgets at the same time. So there's that as well. But on the EMF topic of things, that's not so great maybe either if you are concerned about that. That's why a lot of people do the biohackery ones, might then tend to do the Oura Ring, because it will Bluetooth, has a Bluetooth element to it, so that you can sleep without kind of being presumably impacted by that, and then still get the data.
What was the one that you had on?
The Oura Ring Whoop. This one's
so that is the Whoop. Okay.
Yep, that one's the Whoop. And then, like I said, the Dream, the headband one, I had such high hopes for that. It can really be helpful for, also I've found for men, it tends to work better. For women with our hair, we tend to just, it can like fall off because it's head-based. But soon
The Dream also does a good job if you're meditating. So where you would spend in some areas like, 10 to 15K to do sort of like neural feedback, you can use the Dream to get that kind of feedback for meditation, which is pretty cool. And it's a lot less.
I just got the Muse for
sorry, not the Dream, the Muse.
Yeah, the Muse. I just got the new one because they're adding in properties around sleep, so it's on there right now, but apparently coming soon to an update near you, it will be on there too, so it'll also track during sleep. And then there's a few other software providers or third-party providers that then you can overlay some of the data, so you can see what brain states you're in at different parts, and then presumably when they do the update, you'll see that for sleep too.
So,
Right.
Aura Ring, do you, because like I said, I'm using Sleep Cycle and like it's on Wi-Fi and it's this far from my head while I'm sleeping. So
Right.
like, probably not so good. So with the Aura Ring, you're saying it's on Bluetooth and then like my phone could be somewhere else, or is that how you have it? And it could be connected. I can turn off Wi-Fi. It could be using data. Is that kind
Yep.
of the practice you
Yeah,
recommend?
exactly. Go to airplane mode. So you can put on airplane mode. So then, and then if you do it that way, there's two options. It doesn't have to be on airplane mode, but if you are concerned about that airplane mode, and then when you put it on the charger, it uploads to your phone. But yeah, definitely though, I am wary of the apps that do have you put the phone right next to you, particularly if you do see any of the meter readings, and then you're like, oh God, right next to my head, is this gonna be helpful? And again, controversial topic, but like why risk it? So there's that.
Yeah, great.
Oh, can't hear you, Juliana, sorry.
Oh, one last question. Does anybody want to go? All right. All right. I'll ask you one last question. Sleep for babies. I know we've got some people who are up and coming moms and dads. We've got some people who have like little tiny ones that don't allow anyone to sleep. So I know that there's baby gadgets too. Like there's like the Snoop and there's all this stuff, like anything that you would recommend for either hacks for parents to get sleep or hacks for babies to fall asleep.
Yeah, great question. So I should call out that I am specifically not in, like, I avoid at all costs, honestly, the new parent realm, the young kids realm. It's just a whole other area. So I really work with the people that are just as nuts as I am and have the difficulty turning off the brain and you know, all of that. So that's really more my forte. There are some incredible source points for new parents, newborn sleep experts, all that. So having asterisk that, yeah, there are some really cool gadgets on the market, you know, for the baby bassinets, but there's just so many opinions on this topic that it's like, again, another reason why I avoid it like the plague, because a lot of people will have a lot of things to think about what that might do for the developmental process of the baby, putting it in the bassinet. So there's a lot. So one, setting expectations. And I think the biggest thing, since I'm so behavioral based, I'm behavior, technology, and accountability. So as much as we can do to take the time to look at our schedule, create workability, create partnership, hopefully with our partner, or any other resources that we can pull, thinking outside the box to structure as much of a just disruptive time in our lives as possible. You know, wonderful time, great time. I'm clearly not a parent, but you know, really doing the prep work, I have found that to make the biggest difference for those new parents to just, one, set expectations, two, you know, to structure things in a way that will help support that area. And if you want to get some of the gadgets and the self-rocking bassinets and all of that, you can test that out. Some of them, you know, have less EMF than others, but kind of just doing a little bit of the trial and error on that, if that's in alignment with your ethics and morals and all that.
Yeah, and then Trisha, you asked the CBD question.
Yes. So CBD, great question. So what I want to say about that is, okay, so THC and CBD are a fascinating area for sleep. As a whole, I'm going to say a lot of blanket statements here, but as a whole, we want to support that versus some of the more traditional sleep aids, so like benzodiazepines or hypnotics, because very, very, very concerning over the long term. So if you can then go into the realm of THC and CBD, absolutely. So having said that, preferable. But then THC is, we do find, as the current studies that we see tend to have more fragmentation in sleep, tend to be a bit problematic for sleep depending on dosage and different things, whereas CBD seems a bit more promising for kind of having it all of improving sleep quality, and for some people, even improving deep sleep quality. So I would, if you can merge into that area, that can be great. THC, though, can be a fantastic alternative if pain is part of the problem. And so THC tends to do better than CBD for pain. So if that's really keeping you awake, which I have clients that really struggle, and that can be very, very helpful. But you'll want to absolutely test with both of those and play with the dosages on both. But CBD can, as of right now, our understanding is that it seems to have very little negative impact. Being mindful of the types of prescriptions you have, because it can actually impact some of the absorption rate of things like that. But my main point is anything we're taking, one, we want to approach things almost like, I have this philosophy of the desert island kind of approach. So we want to be able to get ourselves to a state where we could be dropped in a desert island and still know ourselves to get fantastic sleep, even without all the gadgets. So that's part of our main goal too, because we don't want to be really reliant on all these things too, if at all possible. And it can also be very distracting, particularly to anxious brains, to say, should I take this thing, the supplement, the CBD, the blah, 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 and can be kind of a hyper aroused thing for some people. So, but I've seen it do miraculous things for people also to be able to transition off of medications that were no longer serving them. So I think it's a very exciting area and highly preferable to the other sleep aids on the market, even including melatonin, by the way.
Very cool. So just to, for all of you who survived past the 6 minutes past the hour, just to let you know, I know there was a lot of information. Molly, I'm gonna see if maybe I can get you, or maybe I will just kind of just put a couple of things, kind of like what can you do desert island wise, and if you want to sort of tech geek out, what are some of put some Amazon links for people so that they can kind of see it. Also, Molly said she'd be in Slack Monday through Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yeah, I can do through, we can do through Wednesday. That's totally fine.
Okay, cool. So I'll add her into Slack. So in case you you don't want to forget your questions, you can direct message her. She'll be in there this afternoon. She's got a bunch of podcasts because she's a vera busy. But she's very desired and wanted by the sleep community. So
y'all can't sleep. It's the problem with the lockdown and the stress. People are losing it.
Yeah. So that way, you can direct message her any private questions that you might have. But just setting up expectations, she won't actually be answering anything till like Monday through Wednesday, right? So that she can get some sleep this weekend. So that'll be good. But that way you guys have access and you don't forget. So I will add you, Molly, and then that stuff, and then we'll coordinate in getting these guys some, just like some links and stuff like that, I think would be really cool. Even though I know you have like a million links, which is,
I know.
kind of give them the 80-20 of like.
Yeah, I'll keep it more normal. Just so you know, my newsletter is called Molly's Monday Obsessions. If you couldn't tell, I'm a bit of an obsessive personality. So if you ever want resources
You're
on
in the right group. This everyone here has pretty obsessive personality.
Okay, I feel like I belong.
You do belong. You're in the right tribe. So if so that way you guys can connect with her, and then I'll upload the Tinker Talk, because I know she talked about like 20 million things. So if you want to go back, I'll include that and the transcript via Otter. So not everything will get translated perfectly, but you guys can kind of do your due diligence there. And just so you guys know, next week, and Molly, you're invited if you'd like to. I know you tend to have podcasts on Fridays, but next week we are having David Markovich. So if you want to be on the calendar and you're not, you can put in the calendar. David Markovich is the founder of Online Geniuses, which is a 30K community of people, all marketers, which is really fascinating. So he's going to be talking about scaling communities. All right, guys.
Very cool. Yeah, I would like to be a part of that. Come back to my obsessive group.
Yay! All right, so we'll have you here. Guys, kick ass. Have a great weekend, and I shall see you later.
Thank you, Molly.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.